about the brain stuff for a little bit. So everybody, make it okay time. Now I want you to put your hand on your chin. Who made their chin? Oh, yeah. So welcome to mirror neurons. Our kids really are watching us way more than they're listening to us. So this is just a little lesson in do as I say, not as I do. So we hear chin, but you did, most of you did what I told you to, you did what I did, right? You didn't do what I told you to do. So what happens with mirror neurons, and this is all will become why this is important, is that we're wired up to mimic each other. It's one of the ways we learn. So remember when you had your newborns, you stick your tongue out, and they stick their tongue out back out at you? It's the way our brains are wired up. We're wired up to mimic. And we, as we mature and grow and stuff, we are able to manage ourselves and not copy. Like your little brains are telling you, don't raise your hand, Amy. You're thinking, stick my hand in the air, stick my hand up in the air. But your brain is taking care of that, and you're not sticking your hand, you're not copying me. So the reason it's important to know about mirror neurons is one of the best ways to deal with your lovely adolescent brains. So here's what's going on for them. So as those puberty, right before puberty starts, their brains go through this immense amount of growth. And actually, because of the wonder of MRIs, they've seen that kids' brains are actually bigger before puberty starts. So there's all this rapid growth, and there's all this crazy brain growth, it's all really good stuff. And then all of a sudden, your wonderful, easygoing 12-year-old becomes a total pain in the ass. They're defiant, they're emotional, they're totally crazy. So what's happening is that in the prefrontal cortex and the rest of the brain is this process of pruning. So those pathways that have been really attended to, like if your kids, I have this great quote from the guy that figured all this fun stuff out. His name's Jay Guy. He says, if a teen is doing music or sports or academics, those are the cells and connections that will be hardwired. If they're lying on the couch or playing video games, those are the cells and connections that are going to be hardwired. So what happens is the brain goes through this process of pruning. Big growth and then prune. All the crap that's not getting used gets trimmed away. So there's this thing, Dan Siegel has this thing called brain in the palm of the hand. So you guys can use your mirror neurons and do this with me if you'd like to. So put your little paws up in the air. So imagine this is your brain. So here's your brain stem down here, and bring your thumb across. This is the amygdala, the midbrain. What happens in the midbrain is fight or flight, emotions are stored there, and then fold your hand over, and this is the cortex. So in the prefrontal cortex is called the CEO of the brain. And the CEO of the brain is responsible for if-then thinking, reasoned decision-making, emotional control, that kind of stuff. So when all that pruning starts up, the brain cannot do that if-then thinking. It can't make reasonable decisions. It can't control its emotions. So kids fly off the handle. When they fly off the handle, they flip their lids. What's running the show? The emotional center. And when the MRI kids, when they're processing emotions, and they have way more brain activity here than they do up here in the prefrontal cortex. So welcome to mirror neurons. Here's your kid. Prefrontal cortex, prune. Your kid's like this. What do? Hey. Right? These are the mirror neurons. So your kid flips out, you flip out back. You might have noticed this before puberty. You flip out, your kid flips out. So here's the beautiful and sad part. Your brain is, in theory, fully developed. You're not pruning. Your kiddo is pruning. So when you see your kid flip out over totally random weird stuff, right? I mean, I remember, apparently I like talking about myself tonight. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would say, hey, Amy, can you take the garbage out? And I would say, and I quote, I don't want the fucking garbage taken out. You take the fucking garbage out yourself. Lovely. Wasn't I fun to live with? Blessedly, my mother does not remember any of this. And I must have been on the end of the brain development stuff because I remember this. And I remember going, bleh, and like flipping out, and I have this memory of this flood of like piss pissed offedness and that. So here you go, flip out, flip out. So your job, when your kid is doing this weird stuff, like you say your daughter comes downstairs in the morning and you say, oh, your hair looks different today. And she says, oh my God, you ate my hair! And freaks out. She's like this. And you get to say, oh, she's having one of those lip-flipped moments. My job is to not do that as much as you want to. You can control yourself. So if you have that happen, your kid's flipped out, you just take a big deep breath, do that, anything you need to do to kind of keep yourself in check. Don't engage with them. They are out to sea. They are out to sea. The interesting part is if you go back and say, hey, you know, this morning when you flipped out about your hair, they will sometimes say, what? They won't have any memory of the flip out because it's all about biology. It's all about biology. So your job is to control yourself. So if you find your kid flipped out and you feel that, everybody knows that rising of emotion, right? You feel that happening, you tell yourself, oh no, my brain's fully developed. I don't need to do this. And then come back later when everybody's calmed down and then engage about whatever it is that has set them off or whatever happened. Because they can be pretty awful, right? Like I was pretty awful with my mother, right? And come back and say, hey, we need to talk about this and engage in a more calm, respectful conversation. So speaking
what do you do in the moment?
in the moment, just say, sounds like you're really upset.
I would say, but you don't care about me, and you know, if you're just like kind of walking away or
You can hang in there with them and say, I hear you think I don't care about you. All your really good reflective listening skills, and you're all calm, cool, and collected. Because what are they going to do? They might come back down, and they're going to come back down sooner if you can stay in that spot. Now, when you find yourself doing this, just say, oh wow, I'm noticing that I'm starting to feel angry, so I'm going to take a break. Let's talk about this later. And then you hustle up, and they might follow you, and just deal. They might follow you, unless they're going to harm themselves or they're throwing things at you or whatever. And then you might need to get big and scary because sometimes that needs to happen. But and this isn't easy to do. This isn't easy to do. I mean, the only thing I can relate to is my toddler. Right, Milo's 8. Right, I can relate to 4-year-old, 3-year-old Milo flipping his shit all over the place. Right, and knowing now. I didn't know this then. Knowing now that I know, if I had stayed calm instead of with him, he would have come back down, I would have come back down, and we would have been able to do better. So toddlerhood and adolescence have some real good meeting points. Go ahead.
So, I hear you saying I don't disagree with you, but I want to ask a philosophical question, which I've gone to a couple of people, similar talks, and it's all, this is something that our kids can't control, it's hormonal. But I look at the generational differences between our total acceptance and solving them and their responsibility. Who says, well, this is not your, you're not responsible, this is all hormonal. And looking at other generations and other cultures who say, you know what, you're still responsible for yourself. And the rest of the people in the house don't necessarily enjoy or deserve your attitude and your behavior. And that I think on one hand, you hear people say it's not their fault, but on the other hand, they do have a responsibility after a human being.
Yeah.
And someone who is, and so I think I do really like about, you trying to be calm in the eye of this storm and whatnot. But can you talk a little bit about helping them to understand that they are responsible?
Yeah.
They're responsible for how they handle this.
Right.
And the choice that, take it out on their child or whatever they need to
Right.
do.
Right. So they are responsible. At least for you guys, is that some of this they can't help. So knowing that allows you to find a place of compassion for them. So there's that piece. They are responsible for their behavior. So coming back and saying, let's brainstorm some ideas. So when you feel that feeling of that rising up feeling, so help them to put some language around that. What are we going to do? If you feel that feeling, what can you do for yourself? What can you, have them come up with some ideas about how they're going to manage themselves, because they can't be running around and freaking out